Hello, welcome to Arbitration Ireland's 9th International Arbitration Day. My name is Paul Gardner. It's my pleasure to welcome you to this year's conference as President of Arbitration Ireland. I want to welcome those attending this morning in America, including, of course, members of the New York chapter of Arbitration Ireland. I also want to welcome those attending in Europe, including, of course, members of the London chapter of Arbitration Ireland. And I think we might even have some people in the Far East and Australasia and everybody there in the evening time or late at night. Indeed, you're all very welcome. It's a pleasure to have all of you with us. Of course, we would prefer if you're all with us in person. And we hope that we will be able to host all of you in person in Dublin around this time next year. Put the event in your diary, and we hope we'll see you all here in Dublin. You've all received a programme of this afternoon's events and discussions, and I want to thank particularly ICSID for partnering with Arbitration Ireland this year to host this event. It wouldn't really have been possible at all without ICSID, and we thank ICSID, and we're hosting on the ICSID WebEx platform. So thank you very much to ICSID. We're very grateful to have Meg Kinnear address the conference, and Meg will address us in a few moments. Following Meg, it will be my pleasure to introduce Paul Gallagher, Attorney General of Ireland, who will give a keynote address. Before I introduce Meg and Paul, I would like to say a few thank yous to people who've worked very hard in these unusual times to make sure this conference could go ahead and to keep it as a constant in the diary of international arbitration practitioners. I particularly want to thank Rose Fisher, who is the Executive Director of Arbitration Ireland. Many of you will have met Rose last year when we hosted in person, and we hope you will meet Rose next year when we host in person. But Rose has been a magnificent addition to Arbitration Ireland. She's been here for a few years now, so we're going to have to stop saying that. But she does tireless work and is an expert manager of time and of people. And without Rose, we really couldn't have pulled off this event this year. I want to thank all of the speakers who you're going to hear from this afternoon on the various panels for no doubt insightful contributions which each of them will bring to the topics which they will discuss. And also I'm looking forward to the quickfire round, which will be chaired by Mr. Justice Barnevall, the designated arbitration judge in Ireland. Hosting conferences like this, even virtual ones, takes a lot of time and expertise, but also requires money. And we're delighted to welcome back as our sponsor this year, Cornerstone Research, who have been a fantastic supporter of Arbitration Ireland over the years. Cornerstone, as you'll all know, provides high-quality expert testimony and economic and financial consulting in all aspects of litigation and regulatory proceedings. I look forward particularly to hearing the thoughts of Ronnie Barnes from Cornerstone in the course of the first panel discussion on remedies and defences in COVID-related litigation. That discussion will follow Paul Gallagher's address. I also want to thank Gwen Malone, stenographers who are partnering with us again this year and who keep an accurate record of everything that you say in the course of the day. I want to also thank the Subcommittee of Arbitration Ireland, Gavin Woods, Susan Ahern, Paul McGarry, Margaret Austin, Richard Breen, and in particular, Colin Mahushin and Klaus Reichert, who have helped put this together. All of those name-checked members are members of the Executive Committee of Arbitration Ireland, and without the work of the Executive Committee, then we wouldn't be as expanding and forward-moving as we are in having Dublin recognised as a seat and venue for international arbitration. At the end of all of the panels, we're going to try a virtual session. Normally we have a real session in the sheds in Dublin, but we're going to try a virtual session, so stay on for that. Without further ado, let me introduce our first speaker of the day, Meg Kinnear. Meg, as you'll know, is Secretary General of ICSID in Washington, Vice President of the World Bank Group, and Secretary General of the International of ICSID. As Secretary General, she oversees a staff of 70 people, administering more than 300 investment arbitrations each year. She was formerly Senior General Counsel and Director General at the Trade Law Bureau of Canada. And it's my absolute privilege and pleasure to hand over to Meg.
Thank you very much. I just want to add a quick note of thanks for including ICSID as part of the Dublin International Arbitration Day. And like you, Paul, I only regret that we are not there in person at your beautiful facilities at the distillery building. We had the pleasure of signing an arbitration facilitation agreement with the center. And so I've had a tour of it, and I'm looking forward to the chance when we can do some arbitrations there. I am sure that everybody has had their lives affected by this pandemic in a variety of ways. And so we're trying to look at the silver linings as we go through this event. I guess one of the silver linings is we all have a new vocabulary, Blue Jeans and Zoom and WebEx. For us, one of the silver linings has been that we've been taught how well we can actually operate using remote technology. So when we were sent home in mid-March, literally overnight, we changed all of our filing from a mix of hard copy and electronic to 100% electronic. And we're going to keep with that in our efforts to speed things up and not to waste paper. We were also able to switch to remote hearings. And we've now done more than 130 remote hearings since mid-March. And they are really quite extraordinary. And I have to say, I am in awe of my staff who have been able to meet every single problem with a solution. So we've had remote hearings that are in 3 time zones with something like 40 witnesses, 70 people tuned in, live note transcript. And I think it's really quite a feat that they have done. So I'd like to just encourage people, if you have any hesitation about these hearings, they can be done so incredibly professionally. The one thing I think that we are unable to replicate, of course, is how nice it is to see our friends and to meet in person and to talk in person. And so on behalf of ICSID, I would like to send you a virtual hug, or if that's inappropriate, a virtual handshake. But just to say that I too hope that we will all be able to be in person next year. And I wish you a very good conference. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Meg. We look forward to welcoming you to Dublin next year. It's now my pleasure to introduce Paul Gallagher, Senior Counsel. Paul's bio on the conference is blank, and that's not because there's nothing to say about Paul. It's just that we'd have needed an extra page. So we left it blank, and Paul has been the stalwart of the Irish Bar, twice Attorney General, great interest in arbitration and a great supporter of Arbitration Ireland while at the bar and in his role as Attorney General when the Arbitration Act 2010 was being enacted. Paul was singularly behind that. So it's a privilege to introduce Paul and to ask him to deliver the keynote address to the conference. Thank you, Paul.
Thank you very much, Paul, for that introduction, very kind introduction. And hello to everybody, and thank you all for participating in this event. It's very much appreciated that you have made the effort to join us in these difficult times. I'd also like to convey thanks to all the people that were mentioned by Paul, Rose Fisher in particular, for all the work done in connection with the conference. My only element of surprise is that I have never managed to get on the executive committee, and I now find there are about 20 people on the executive committee. So it might belie some of the things that Paul said about me, but I'm sure I can take that up separately. The arbitration is something that we all know is particularly important, as providing an alternative means and mechanism of resolving disputes. And it is something to which you are all committed. And I think this is about commitment to this mechanism to ensure that its use grows over time and that it's available to more and more potential clients as a means of an efficient and effective and resolving disputes. As Paul said, I've taken a particular interest in the development of arbitration law in Ireland. Back in 2009, I worked on the Arbitration Act 2010, which replaced our 1954 Arbitration Act, which was wholly outdated and unsuited to a modern environment. And I had the support at the time of the Minister for Justice, Dermot Ahern, the Department of Justice, who continue to take a very significant interest in arbitration in Ireland and in supporting its development and availability. I also had the help of many people in working on the Arbitration Act. Francis Kieran, who worked with me at that stage, did tremendous work. But I would like to record my special thanks to my great friend and predecessor, Rory Brady, who initiated this change in the law, and which I was fortunate to see through and ensure it was implemented. I mention that because I think it is an indication of how serious Ireland takes arbitration. You remember that in 2009 and 2010, when the Arbitration Act was enacted, Ireland was convulsed in a financial crisis which threatened its financial viability. Those were very difficult times in government, and yet government found the time to devote to enactment of the Arbitration Act when its agenda was totally taken up with measures designed to address the financial crisis and alleviate the burden that fell on the Irish people. So there is a real commitment, not just in word, but in deed in this country to arbitration and its encouragement. Another aspect of which I am proud but take note is that that was a time when the rule of law was under challenge because significant measures had to be taken to try and address the crisis. But the rule of law in the wider sense of Ireland honouring its legal obligations. And as the world now knows, Ireland has honoured all of its legal obligations during that period, and through effort and determination worked its way out of its difficulties and has restored the financial viability of this country. And it was one of the fastest growing economies in the world till it was struck down again by the COVID crisis, and we're now tackling new challenges that we and so many other countries are learning to adapt in order to meet those challenges and to find solutions in order to alleviate the burden. So the commitment in Ireland to arbitration is real, but that commitment was only able to be matured and to be demonstrated by the extraordinary reception which we have received from all of you and all of our friends in the arbitration world internationally. And we do appreciate that tremendously. This started off in 2010, an attempt to outreach and engage with other countries. Then this arbitration conference started 8 years ago, and it has grown and grown with your support and generosity. While we're anxious to develop arbitration in Ireland and the outreach of Irish lawyers and the availability of Ireland as a venue for arbitration, we don't do so in a spirit of promoting ourselves in some exceptional way or thinking this is something that we should get a greater share of at the expense of others. As you will all know, in the Middle Ages, indeed right up to the end of the century, economists used to believe that the wealth of the world was fixed. So if some people got richer, others got poorer. Adam Smith in The Wealth of Nations explained how that was an incorrect way of perceiving how economies existed and how they could develop. And it seems to me that what we are all trying to collectively achieve in arbitration is something similar. The cake isn't fixed so that if some countries increase their footprint in arbitration, other countries must lose out. This is a cake that is increasing because it is and has its own justification, its own advertisement, and it has developed in the thinking of people who use legal services as an extremely attractive dispute resolution mechanism to the court process, and as I say, provides efficiency, speed, but not at the expense of fairness or the application of law. So when you join us today, I will speak a little bit about Ireland, but I do so in a very respectful way in terms of the achievements of all of you and your countries in developing this system, which we have been privileged to join at a much later stage. But the support you've given us is heartfelt, and I know all of my colleagues and those about whom Paul spoke share that view I have with regard to the support that we have achieved and that is exemplified today. And in that context, I would like to pay particular thanks to Meg for the support of ICSID, which we very much appreciate. I believe that the development of arbitration in Ireland has gained pace in recent years. That is because I think more and more people recognise that Ireland does have a role to play in arbitration, that we have the skilled lawyers who can provide services, whether as advocates or as arbitrators, as is evident from the reports of the various arbitration bodies indicating the nationality of arbitrators who have participated in arbitration. That in turn is perhaps a reflection of a country that is outward looking, a country that is seeking to continually develop its skills while learning from others. Ireland, as some of you may know, is not only a very open economy, which is one of the reasons we were hit so badly by the financial crisis, but it's an economy who, in terms of its people and of its industry, see its place in the future in an international context, exemplified by its very integrated role in the European Union, but also in the connection it makes with the Irish diaspora in other countries and the support we get from the Irish diaspora, which in turn provide a link to those other countries. We are one of the biggest foreign investors in the United States. People know about the enormous investment in Ireland by US companies, but Ireland in the last decade has invested enormously in the United States. There are now 900 Irish companies active in the US, investing over 14.6 billion. We are, in terms of comparative investments with other countries, the seventh investor in the US. Forbes magazine has ranked Ireland as one of the best countries for business, not just for the large multinationals, but for future investment from other multinationals. There's a huge biopharma industry, high-tech industry in Ireland, and the IDA, which promotes investment in Ireland, rates Ireland as one of the 15 most innovative countries in the world and the first in the world for investment incentives. I think that development of our economy, that philosophical outlook as to how we regard the rest of the world, is an indication of, and perhaps a partial explanation as to why we support arbitration and what we're attempting to do to establish the confidence that others need to have in our ability to deliver in that context. In that regard, I'd like to pay particular tribute to my long-time friend and now Judge Barneville for the commitment he has shown over the years and in the commercial court in later years as arbitration judge. And he has authored some very significant judgments. I think David is to be congratulated for that. And also, those of you who know Judge Barneville will know that in most visiting cards, most correspondence, most tweets, most WhatsApp, most text messages, he includes a very handsome picture of himself. That's not included in his judgments, you'll be delighted to hear. It's just the name at the end of the judgment. And his skill, his unique skill in hiding his advancing years and controlling his increasing or can only be admired. And I'm sure you'll all appreciate it when he leads one of the panels on this meeting today. On a more serious note, I know that people who are interested in arbitration in Ireland are concerned with the law that relates to third-party funding in court litigation. I just want to say that the view of Arbitration Ireland, which has been communicated, my own view is that that doesn't apply in arbitration, but there is an anxiety that that be put beyond doubt, and the Minister for Justice is actively considering that issue at the moment to consider the introduction of a provision that would put that beyond doubt, because it is important that people have the assurance that the commitment is total and that the facilities match those elsewhere in the world, not just in terms of the physical environment, but the court and other supports for arbitration. So on that note, I would like to thank you all again, thank Paul in particular for what he has done, pay tribute to all my colleagues in the solicitors profession and the barristers profession who have done so much to promote arbitration, many of whom are participating today. And I might be forgiven if I mention especially Colm O'Hushin, whom I remember in those difficult days in 2009, when he gave me so much help in relation to the Act and has given me so much help since, including for today. So thank you all for participating. I hope you have a great conference and that we see you all here soon again. Many thanks.